if you take a skill saw and you're trying to cut something and you go into it and you realize, oh, you got the angle wrong. You pull it out real quick and then you go back in and make another cut. There's evidence for this.
Yeah.
But if you're doing it slowly with whatever methods they have, they claim they had to cut those stones, you wouldn't be going the wrong way, then pull back out and then start going the right way. You would obviously be going so slow that you would be able to make adjustments along the way.
That's right. And there's plenty of evidence for overcuts, and exactly that type of thing is one of the reasons why I think, look, that we're seeing evidence for, call them power tools, call them just powerful tools that were cutting incredibly hard stone. And that's one of the best. I have, we can look at some of those images if you like of tooling. I mean, not just cuts. You see these cuts all over the place. Well, I don't know if this is all broken up stone now, but there's these types of things you see all over it at this is on the basalt pavement. But one of my favorite ones is actually, I really like the edge of this thing. It's a slab at Abu Sir. It's this beautiful slab. And if you look along the edge, it's been like just finely touched with some sort of powerful tool that's sort of been backed out. It's got, this thing's got markings all over. You have these giant circular saw depressions here and here.
Good Lord.
You can look at how many times this thing's been touched on.
What is this made of?
This is, I think it's schist. I think it's schist, or it's blue quartzite maybe. It's a very unique piece. I'm amazed it's still there because a couple people could probably move it. And it's just a remarkable piece of stone. Let's see where else you got. Yeah, so Yusuf's pointing out the big circular saw indentation. All the colors come out of it when you wet it. We usually wet this one and show people. And it was actually, so it was cut right through here at the end and then snapped off. You can see that on the end here. Cut straight through. Here's some other looks at the circular saw marks on this thing. Absolutely amazing tooling marks in this.
Perfectly straight.
Yeah, and you have, let me look, I think it's in statues. I want to show you the overcuts. Yeah, I mean, you have stuff like this, right? So this is at Karnak Temple. I just did a video on this. This is in an obelisk, and you literally have circular saw overcuts, and you see them on statues too, but you can literally see on this one here where it was exactly what you were talking about. Like,
you see right there, yeah.
It was reset, like the angle of the cut was reset.
Yep.
And it was some sort of giant circular saw because they start narrow, they start here and they penetrate and they get deeper, and then they peter out at the bottom. Like the profile fits a big circular saw. And in fact, there's some more of these at Karnak, and I do this in the video, but I've plumbed them with like a key card where you can show the depth increase. You show the profile of a circular saw cut.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean it's
so the depth varies from the middle being the deepest, and then it gets shallower towards the ends.
Yeah, I mean this is a classic example of a circular saw cut. You see this here, right? I mean, it's hard to. They had straight saws too. There's I should say that it's not all circular saws. There was absolutely straight saws too. This piece is very interesting. This is at a place called Abu Rawash. If Chris Dunn does talk about this in his book, a lot of people have talked about this. I think even maybe Petrie talked about it. But you see how it's you clearly can see the orientation of the saw, right? Here's the crazy thing to think about this piece. It's concave. See this line in the center here? You can actually see it here. See this curve?
Yes.
So it's shaped like this. It's concave. So it's cut this way, and it seems to have been cut this way. So it's not straight. So what I think you're looking at is a two-stage machining process here, where they cut, and this is where that concavity ends here. Like you can see, it gets deeper and then shallows out.
Yep.
So they cut it sideways through this, and then it's almost as if they ran a circular saw this way, and they just pushed the block through like this, so it was digging out that profile as it went through. But there's this, it's hard to see in the photos, but it's entirely there, and again you see the striations in the stone from the cutting mechanism. Right,
the little grooves.
This is in very sophisticated machining in stone. Like I don't know what the purpose was for this, whether this was it could have been part of a box. They didn't cut all the way through the stone. I don't know. Here's another good. That's just good stuff like this. Yeah, like I mean,
Lord, we're blowing Steven's mind right now.
I mean, I've got endless examples of this, and I mean, I like this one too. But you can see it's just been, and you actually look close to, you can actually see the striations, like the individual cut lines. So it gets really interesting with this because you know, a lot of these saw marks, the basalt ones, and again, basalt being kind of as hard, if not a little harder than granite, are in what's this basalt pavement that's to the east of the Great Pyramid, and it's on the sides because they would finish the top and it was perfectly flat. In fact, it's a wondrous application of stonework, but over the years and millennia, it's been falling apart. In fact, as they even built back in the day, they built a road. They had a road over it. Like they literally put down a road over the top of this basalt pavement. They've taken the road away now. But at the sides of this thing where it's falling apart, you can see where they were rough shaping the blocks, right? There was different types of tools, it seems to me. The quarry, there was like the scoop marks in the quarry. They were looking to remove stone quickly, and they didn't care. It wasn't precise. They're like scooping stuff out to get out as much material as possible so they can get the block out. Then they had the rough shaping of stone, where they were cutting out the kind of the general dimensions of the block, and we might be looking at that with this, where they're just cutting on the side, and okay, we want to get this down to this point. And then there was a capability to just perfectly finish the stone, like fine polishing, fine machining, doing those fine little touches to get those precision surfaces, and then a polish to make it kind of like that mirror finish. So there's different levels, and these were done in different places. And what's interesting with the stone cutting is that we don't have a good explanation for this. There's tube drilling kind of falls under this too, but the stone cutting is like the explanation is that it was grinding with like a copper drag saw, you'd call it. Like it's like a V-shaped copper bar. You put sand and water and you grind and grind and grind, right? Mm-hmm. So you just sit there and grind and grind and grind. And the problem with that is that it doesn't leave.
There's videos of this, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Trying to do this.
Mark Lehner and it's it's a good experiment. There's nothing wrong with the experiment. So Mark Lehner and a guy named Dennis Stocks. Mark Lehner's a famous Egyptologist. Dennis Stocks is an experimental Egyptologist who does actually do these sort of experiments, and it's great because we get some data from his work. But there's a few problems with it. One is it doesn't leave the same signature. Secondly, you don't get overcuts. You don't get these narrow cuts like these. Like you're not going to get this sort of stuff with that because it's V-shaped, right? And based on that data, though, from Dennis and other people, we have data on how long it takes to do this, and it's something like let's round it off and say I think it's a little tiny bit over, but about 2 millimeters per hour, right? With
that grinding technique,
yeah, and that varies based on the length of the cut. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the longer the cut, the slower you go. So 2 millimeters, roughly 2.5 or whatever millimeters per hour. It's very, very slow is the takeaway. And at the same time, you lose copper. Like the grinding, because it's the quartz sand that's doing the cutting, the copper's kind of, you could use horn or potentially even wood, but even using copper, you lose copper at a tremendous rate. So you lose almost as much, if not more copper than you're actually getting from cutting the stone. And it's a very slow rate. So with that slow rate, you'd have to grind away for hours to get these sort of overcuts that we see, for starters. So it's and again, as you said, you're probably not gonna make that mistake and sit there and keep doing that mistake for hours and hours to get an overcut. Like, all right, Johnson, you're in trouble. Right? Like, and secondly, I have yet to do the math, but I plan on. I'd love to do this. I've said it a few times now, but I want to scale this up to see what is at an industrial scale. Can the stuff, because we know you can kind of calculate how many blocks, how much granite was cut. You can probably get to a rough figure of how much tonnage of granite, say just at Giza, or maybe just on the Middle Pyramid complex. I don't know. Okay. But, Chris Dunn kind of calculated it, just to give you an example, there's a box inside the Middle Pyramid, right? There's a box in the room, kind of like the box in the King's Chamber. It's a little bigger, a little longer, like maybe 8 feet long and 3 or 4 feet wide. And based on Dennis Stocks' experiments, purely to make the primary cuts on that block of granite, so assume you quarry the granite, takes God knows how long, but just to make like the north, south, east, west, top and bottom cuts, right, to shape the box, using the data that we've got from guys like Dennis Stocks, would take something like 267 days of continuous grinding, 24 hours a day, just to shape that one box. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't include hollowing it out, because again, it's a single piece box, right? It's been hollowed out, it's been finished perfectly. You've got tube drills in it. It's all shaped and decorated, and there's who knows how much work in doing that as well. So it's just like, you really think you could scale up and do like hundreds of thousands of tons worth of granite work using this. And where's all the copper dust? Where is it? Like there's tons and tons and tons and tons of copper must have been used to do this. And yeah, so
didn't they analyze that famous core, Petrie's core? And I think in Chris's book, I think I read this also, where they took a modern day tube drill and they basically estimated based on the rings going around the outer edge of the tube, the core that came out, that they estimated that the drill would have been 500 times more powerful than any modern drills.
So based on, so in fact, this is Petrie's core, where I've got another image of it here. Let's see, where's the other one? No, that's not it. This one will do, it's fine, same thing. Let's go, computer. Okay, so yeah, that's Petrie's core number 7 there. So so Petrie, and it's called Petrie's core number 7 because Flinders Petrie discovered it, and it's exhibit number 7 on his. And this is the one that's been studied. So he looked at it, and he determined that this spiral groove that's on the stone has what you'd call a 1 in 60 penetration rate, right? So if you unwind that spiral travel, stick it out in a straight line. For every 60 inches of horizontal travel, you're getting an inch of vertical travel, 1 in 60.
Right. Okay.
Chris Dunn has since, I think, refined that a bit. It's not quite as deep. It's a little less than 1 in 60. It's in the ballpark. And yeah, so based, and then when you compare that to our modern tools, that's it essentially rounds out to being about 500 times greater penetration rate into stone than we can achieve. And that's not to say that it may have moved very slowly doing this, or our stuff spins really fast, so it's not penetrating it as fast per, you don't get a 1 in 60 penetration rate, but our stuff can still maybe cut the stone pretty quickly, but the actual penetration rate based on the motion of the drill isn't anything like what we're seeing in the stone here, which is crazy. And there are a number of these cores. I've talked a lot about this core, as has Chris, and I'm sure when you get Chris in, he'll talk about it too. But I consider the case is closed, bro. Like they did a latex mold of it, and he has proven without any doubt that it's a spiral groove. The problem has always been the claim that it's a spiral groove. That's the one thing that no one in, I guess, mainstream Egyptology will admit, and they go to great lengths to try and obfuscate this idea that it's a spiral groove. But it has been definitively proved by the Petrie Museum, no less, and Chris Dunn, who were both responsible for the latex core experiment, which is this one. So they made they made a latex core of it, right? So this is this latex mold. Chris stamped the latex mold with these notches, cut it open with these notches, and then here's it showing you the notch detail in these blow-ups next to these little arrows, right? So you can draw a straight line between these notches, which is the horizontal line, okay? The straight lines are the horizontal line between the notches, same spot. So it goes to the bottom of the notch, it goes to the bottom of the notch, same down here, bottom of the notch. And then what you're seeing is these dotted lines are tracing the individual spiral or individual grooves. And in every case that we look at here, it starts above the line and it ends up below the line. So it is spiral, right? Mm-hmm. So it's higher here, it's lower here. It's higher here, it's lower here, et cetera, et cetera. It's geometrically proves this is a spiral groove. Mm-hmm. That said,
and the length between each groove is exactly the same, right?
The width.
Oh, that's what I meant. Yeah, the width.
Not really. It seems, well, it's Petrie described as a drunken screw. There are some crossover. It seems to have been more than one cutting point. So there was multiple cutting points. So there might have been some crossover. And I people speculate all day about this. It is, and the other thing to note about this is that it's actually tapered. So it's tough to see. You can kind of see it. See how it's tapered?
Right. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So it narrows down, and this thing's upside down. So this is probably where it's fatter at the bottom. It's upside down. It snaps off here. Mm-hmm. And so you got to imagine the holes that they come out of are straight, right? And it's tapered. So it tells us that the tool itself was probably tapered.
Right.
Which means that it's shaped like this. So as it goes down, it's cutting down, it's cutting down, it's cutting down. It's cutting on all surfaces. And then, so this is where people say, well, this groove could have been made when they retracted the tool, like it unscrewed itself. Mm-hmm. I'm like, that isn't how it would work if it was tapered. So if it's tapered, it's going to conform to, the granite's conforming to the shape of the tool, and then the second you move it up at all, it loses contact with the stone because the angle changes, right? It's narrower at the top and it's wider at the bottom. So once you get down and you're finished, you lift it up a bit, and then all of a sudden the tool's going to be wider right at that point when you lift it up. So it's not actually touching the stone. It doesn't unscrew. It just lifts out. It can't. I don't think unscrewing it or removing the tool will give you the spiral groove. Plus, look, it takes quite a lot of force to cut into granite like this. It's not just a simple. You're not scratching granite and leaving a deep groove like we see in these tubes. It's not just in the. It's not just in the in the drills, but we see it in these holes too. You have these deep grooves in the holes, and you see this all over the place with as many.
Now, is that an example of like them doing a core drill used to split a piece of stone?
Well, I don't think it's used to split a piece of stone so much as they were sought out to then split stone. You know what I'm saying? Like they were. I think the people that were quarrying the blocks were looking for these, and then they would try and split them along the angle of the tube drill. You know what I'm saying? Along the axis of the tube drill. You see it all. There's lots of complete holes like that haven't been split, and in fact, you see on the back of the stones, you see that dashed line, which is a. I mean, that's a technique that started. I mean, they were the earliest. We know they were using it in like the New Kingdom, but these tube drill holes go back way further, and the oldest types we don't see that quarrying method way back in the day. It's like the oldest quarrying method seems to be the scoop method at the quarry, which is kind of
like an
weird.
ice cream scoop.
Yeah. But I think they were looking for them. Like, for example, here's a giant tube drill, right? This is a 9-inch one at Kerkwyk. And this stone's been split along its axis.
Right. So later civilizations found these things and used that to try to split them.
because it's a natural weakness in the stone and you could split them. So you see a lot of tube drills that are in fact split. But you see plenty that are whole as well. And when we know they're whole originally because we have the drill cores.
Can we look at some pictures of these scoop marks?
Yeah. Actually, this is a good point. Yeah, I don't know if I have... let's just go straight to that quarry.
And also, I forgot to ask you, what do you speculate these saw blades could have been made of? It's
less maybe what they were made of than what technology they were using. I mean, Petrie speculated that it could have been. He's like, diamond would fit the bill, like it's because he was looking at a bronze embedded with gemstones or something. But he's like, there's no evidence for diamond use. And he's right. There's no evidence for diamond use in Egypt. We see no diamonds. It's not written about.
Would there be leftover fragments of diamonds?
Yeah, but you'd find something. There's literally been zero. And as far as gemstones go, the dynastic Egyptians sort of prized coloured stones. So diamonds wouldn't have been precious from that perspective. I mean, who knows? Maybe they did use them. We just don't have any evidence for it. But I don't know what it was using. It could any corundum or hardened substance, but it could have. Like I look at the stuff. I don't think there was pure mechanical force involved. I think there's something else going on.
Like how though?
Well, that's the speculation.
Could they have softened the stones?
There's who knows? Were they changing the molecular properties of the stone? Were they using ultrasonics? Were they? I mean, you have to go back to the legends.
Plasmoids?
Have you ever heard of plasmoids? Well, it could have been plasmoids. I don't know. I mean, this is where we speculate. That's why I think it's interesting to be open-minded about what we see on these sites and research it as best we can. Let's use our best tools. Let's microscopically analyze the rock. Let's look at it with being open-minded to any possibility because we might learn something. I think you go back in time, the legend of the Shamir is very interesting. You ever heard this story?
No.
Like the Solomon's Temple, the Shamir and all this. So the Shamir, I'm not that well-versed in this. You should really have... Russ and Kyle,
Who are those guys?
Snake Bros.
The Snake Bros. Yeah,
they would be
great.
great
To reach out to those guys.
Fantastic, and Russ really knows this stuff inside out. But so there's stories in, I think it's associated with King Solomon about the stories of something called a shamir, which it essentially think of it as like a lightsaber that just cuts through stone. Lets people cut through very hard stone. It's sometimes described as a worm. But there's this consistent story of this artifact called a shamir that is like allegedly would let you, I like to think of it as like this lightsaber that just cuts through stone, and people could cut really hard stone with it. It comes out of history. So it's like, was this left over from these times? I don't know. And I try not.
Thinking about it in terms of diamond blades though is like, it's like thinking about it looking in the mirror, like we can't assume that they did shit the way that we do shit, right? This is what we've been talking about with Randall for the past few days.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's the right approach. Like it's a tempting and natural thing to look at a problem. We look at these challenges and we go, this is how we would do it. Right. Fit it into our box. And again, I just think that there's avenues of technology that we are yet to learn about, that we will know more about in time. And I think it's hard to do, but it's like, here's our perspective and here's everything we know, but some of the answers might be out here. Like it's just, and that's what being open-minded about it and not just dismissing stuff and scoffing at it, and then researching it with some of those possibilities in mind, we might even learn something eventually from it. That's what I want to do. People always like, well, what is it and what's a speculation and of how it does it? You can speculate all over the place. Chris Dunn's new book, if you've got to it, the Serapeum chapter.
Yeah, I'm like a quarter of the way through it. I got to finish it. I can't.
He does some amazing speculation. I'm not going to spoil it.
Really?
Oh God, mate, I'd love it. He sent me the Serapeum chapter because I'd helped him with some stuff for it before he wrote it, and I'm writing a recommendation for it. So I've got the book too. It comes out early next New Year. New Year for,
January or something.
January 24. Yeah, for people.
Get them salts, baby.
And then and he does. I love where he goes with it. But it's with speculation. The world. It's an imagination at that point.
Does he talk about these lightsabers?
I haven't seen him mention specifically to Shamir. He's talking more about a potential technological application for the boxes.
Oh, a technological application.
Yeah,
so that's something I've always thought about too. Yeah.
So here's another way to think of it, and I like this idea too. Is that because this relates to. He does talk about this, and this isn't giving the game away here, but it's like if you consider the idea. You heard of like the concept of an assembler. Like
an assembler?
Assembler. Like this is, imagine we get nanotech down to the point, and this is entirely plausible if you just project technology forward, where you create these microscopic machines that can essentially assemble themselves, or they're almost like a von Neumann probe or something like that, but at the tiniest level, where you can use molecular...
A von Neumann probe.
Yeah, it's like a self-replicating probe. Imagine you saying, and there's some interesting books been written on that topic. Yeah, it's like you send a probe out into space, but it has the capability to replicate itself.
Okay.
And just by using the material that it finds, and then project forward 1,000 years and see what happens. Sort of thing. But imagine you get to the point where we have these microscopic machines they're assemblers that can take molecular material even at the atomic level and assemble things and even replicate themselves. So you could build anything, but it's being done with technology that's so small you can't see it. Right? That's this concept. It's been proposed by a number of sci-fi authors and people that have thought about technology.
Yeah.
And it's like that's one scale of things. And the other scale of things to think about as well, if you go out and you think about Dyson spheres and things like that are almost galactic in scope or the size of a solar system in terms of a machine that does a particular thing. It's just an interesting way of thinking and looking at technology. We look at it and we go, here's a box, and how would we cut this box and make this box? But it's possible, whether it's plausible or not, I don't know, but it's possible that the answers to some of these questions could be so small we can't see them or so large we can't comprehend them. Like that's just the nature of technology. Like we just don't, you can throw simulation theory into that too, the idea that we're all just part of some simulation running on the computers of the future. But it's just projections of technology, and this is all pure speculation. So that's one of the challenges with speculation, is that it becomes this just endless imagination of possibilities. But I do try to focus on sort of following the evidence and looking at what some of the answers might be based on the evidence that we have in front of us, and it's fun to speculate. And I'm in the process of writing a book too, and I will speculate, give my speculation in there as well about what it might be, but I always try to be real clear about when I'm speculating. Because as soon as you speculate, people are like, look, he's crazy. He thinks the moon's a spaceship or something.
Oh, yeah, we did. Our last podcast, we were talking about the moon, and somebody took a video and made some crazy reaction video about it.
Yeah. Gotta love that React model.